Oh, it's great to see a good crowd out here. First thing I must say is that this is where, right here, is where I discovered Florida. I was from California, Newport Beach, furthest away from Fish Eating Creek that you can think. But when I first walked in here, it was magic to me. I'm not sure exactly when it was when the Likes brothers shut it down. Ellen was a little PO'd. And it's amazing what she did. And she spent her energy fighting it to get it back, and then she actually ran it. I mean, this lady, well, you could be out here all day and talking about her adventures, bicycling across the country in her 20s, and which was, back then, whatever then was, I'm not that old. But it takes a person with love in their heart to be able to get past the agony of working on these kind of projects. The other project we worked on was a trash burning plant. Resource recovery. That was the big billboard. So it's just amazing to me to see all these people that appreciated Ellen, and I'm sure her heart and effort will continue on through the years and keep this place beautiful. This is one of the, I think maybe the only natural flowing creek back into Everglades. I mean, it's still a natural creek all the way down to the Kissimmee River. So enjoy what you have here. And how many people have not been on a canoe here? Well, you guys got to get out today, and you'll come back because this is a beautiful place. And Ellen, this was her place. This was her Majesty place, and it was fun to know her and have her energy. So thank you much for coming.
Our next speaker is Richard Grosso.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Richard Grosso. I'm an environmental law professor at Nova Southeastern University, the law school. And for many years, I was the general counsel for the Everglades Law Center, which is a law firm, a nonprofit law firm that represents citizens like you and like Ellen throughout South Florida. And I've been through many difficult lawsuits and stressful policy battles over special places like Fish Eating Creek, and worked with Ellen on the coal-fired power plant that we stopped up here several years ago. And Ellen epitomized what is the best of a local activist. So many times when we try to defend our natural heritage and the places that we love, we're trying to defend this place and that other place and this other place, and we're so diffuse. There's so many things we're trying to do at once. But the people we're opposing, this is their thing. This is where they're going to make their millions. This is their project. Their sole focus with an intensity is on beating us and getting what they want. And Ellen matched that. She wasn't scattered everywhere. She knew Fish Eating Creek. She loved it. She was an expert on it. She wasn't distracted by other things. As someone who's litigated these kinds of cases for 26 years, I can tell you that if you cannot match your opponent's focus and intensity, you cannot win. But Ellen could. And so Ellen won. And we have all won because of that. My family and I, my wife and our children first started coming here after Ellen won this place back for the people and began to run it. And we have had some of the most special times of our lives with our closest friends and our children, camping out at Ingram's or Burnt Bridge and paddling on this river. There are special times that I will never forget. with my family, with my 2 young sons who are here with us this weekend, if it weren't for Ellen and her team of people like you. And for that, we are grateful, and generations after us are going to be very grateful for that. Some other things that Ellen stood for that to me are hallmarks of being a great defender of the world. You know, it's easy for people, and like myself and David Guest, we come in from out of town and we're the lawyers. But when you are on the front line and you are battling with people that you run into at the grocery store and see out on the street, and you're there in the community on the front lines every day, that takes a special kind of courage and guts and integrity that she always could muster. And she could muster it because of her grace and her regality and her sense of humor that she never lost. She could pull off fighting the most difficult battles because of her just personal warmth and values that allowed her to get through it. David Guest could not be here from Earth Justice, and David asked me, along with his team, Monica Reimer and Elisa Coe, to read a brief statement. And I give this statement on behalf of all the lawyers who work with people like Ellen and you to defend our state. Ellen was a tireless advocate for the protection of some of our most precious places. I remember her best, writes David, from the 1990s when she was a leader in the war to liberate Fish Eating Creek. She threw everything into the fight. Ellen incorporated Save Our Creeks in 1990, pressed for lawsuits, wrote incisive op-ed pieces, and sent letters to every politician in Florida. When Likes started throwing its weight around, she took the fight right back to them by organizing a demonstration with picket signs in front of the Sun Bank, then owned by Likes Brothers. She called me on the afternoon after the demonstration, and I asked her how it had gone. She giggled, and she paused and said dryly, "You know, they really didn't like us doing that." Ellen savored every battle to protect our environment and won many of them. We are all blessed to have known her, and South Florida is a better place for her. I was honored to come speak about Ellen to all of you today. Thank you.
There are only 2 people in this audience I've known as long as Ellen. One is the lovely woman who became my wife, and the other one I've known, but in a different way, is Frank Mann.
I'm not going to go there, but I got to shake hands with you guys. What a joy. These guys, you mentioned Will McLean.
Yes.
I knew Will McLean. You guys don't know who we're talking about, but he was a songwriter from, go back 50 years. He's from Chipley. I ran into him on the Swanee River. We would meet several times at a annual folk song festival. At White Springs, yeah, you've probably been there. I'm a bit of a guitar frammer myself. I sang with him, Hold Back the Waters from Lake Okeechobee. Is that a powerful one? I can speak fluently some of these tongues. This takes me back, you guys aren't old enough to remember this, but to the 60s. Maybe you saw movies of that time. I've sung many a protest song in my days too, and that's how I got to know Ellen. What a joy to meet new people here today. So many faces that I don't know, and a lot of y'all would say, "Who is this Frank Mann?" I'm a native of Lee County. I was born there 70 years ago when so much of it looked like this. And I've spent a great deal of my political career. I've served in the legislature for 12 years and a total of 7 years on the Lee County Commission. And that's where I met Ellen. And when you guys are talking here earlier about this smiling, happy lady, I'm saying, wait a minute, I may be at the wrong event. Because my relationship with her was not as a friend. I canoed with her one time here with y'all, a lot of you know the name Bill Hammond. Craig Hortman was a biology teacher at Fort Myers High, as was my wife. They were the biology department, and we were backing up 30 plus years here. And that was an indirect connection with Ellen, but my relationship with her was as a politician in the state legislature and then later on the Lee County Commission. And I did not know this happy, smiling, sweet lady y'all are talking about. And whatever you said about, she said, work with everyone. She never said agree with everyone. I never knew a stronger advocate, whether it was for her NOW group. Some of y'all don't even know what that stands for. That's the National Organization of Women. I was there when we were trying to pass the Equal Rights Amendment in the late 70s. It never passed. But I am certainly glad that I was on the right side with Ellen on that one. I'd have been a dead duck. My political career would have ended years ago. But I love that woman for what she fought for. Because today I've got 5 grandchildren. And thank the Lord they're all right here in Lee County with me. And I have done everything I can from the old days when we were inventing the Environmentally Endangered Lands Program in Tallahassee. It was the first thing, and now we've got a 2020 program that is similar to it. It's using public dollars to set aside environmentally sensitive land. That was the kind of issues that Ellen would jump on and insist that you do the right thing on. And if you didn't do the right thing, you were going to hear from her, and you never had to wonder what she was saying. I mean, it was mighty clear. And I'm so glad that I never was on the opposite side of her. We just kind of saw eye to eye on everything. But I can tell you, even if it was just 2 months ago, she called me. And I don't know, whatever the latest issue was, it did not matter that she and I, for nearly 30 years, were on the same side. She said, now, Frank, you got to get out in front on this one. You got to quit hiding. This is an important issue, Frank. Now get off your you-know-what and get going. Ellen, I'm your friend. I know it, but what have you done for me lately? But that was the Ellen. Yeah, I see y'all smiling. That was y'all canoed with her while she was smiling. But I was sitting there, don't hit me again, Ellen. I'll do what you say. But my grandkids are going to be able to enjoy some of the things that I enjoyed as a native here because of her commitment and for her love of nature and for her unwillingness to accept no for an answer. She was, by God, going to get it done right. And these people that were not on her side, they were against God, and they were against citizenship, and they were against everything noble. And we're not going to have another advocate like that. It's going to take 20 of us working full time to do what she did by herself. So I just thank the Lord and thank Mother Nature that Ellen was a part of this area and touched so many lives and will for many generations to come. God bless her.
Our next speaker is Panayiotis Zokas. And if I got close. Followed by Frank Jacqueline.
You made it sound a little more Russian. It's Greek. Panayiotis. I just got back from Greece, and I wish I could have been there with Ellen. I was at a memorial for my grandfather who passed away, who was also a strong fighter in the resistance against fascism in World War II, and then in the resistance against the U.S. forces trying to impose in Greece, in which they did through the CIA. And so I was in this mindset, thinking of my grandfather when I heard the news of Ellen. And I was hoping the best that I could send my spirit there. And while I was working from home on the Earth First movement that I'm involved with, we were posting those newswire stories about Ellen's work and about the situation here on Fish Eating Creek. And so I want to speak briefly a little bit about Ellen and about some of the things that we worked together on. I met the spirit of Ellen through a song by Valerie Wisecracker, who's a musician, and she tells a story about Fish Eating Creek, and I like what someone called the war for Fish Eating Creek, and specifically the moment in that war when some people from this area went out there with a blowtorch and cut down the fence to open it back up using direct action. And that spoke to me, and I thought, I need to know this person. That's the kind of thing I'm into. And I did. Came to know and love Ellen Peterson and found that she was someone who put the earth first. And at the same time, she also recognized, the connection when humans, how the effects of humans in a society that doesn't put the earth first. And I think she did see a lot of issues. While she stayed focused and she knew her bioregion here, she went out on marches around the country. We probably saw each other at the School of America's protest, although we didn't know it 10 and 12 years back. And so I felt a real affinity. And maybe you can imagine it's a hard affinity to find, being myself, being someone who's a kind of wild-eyed anarchist with my own personal joint terrorism task force, escort where I go oftentimes. So I hold on to these sort of affinities to other people who see the urgency that we're in. And it's good to be surrounded by other people who recognize that importance. So a few stories. The first one I want to mention is the battle for Barley Barber, which when we started that fight on the other side of the lake, the most recent manifestation of it, a couple years back, we were looking at Fish Eating Creek as the model, and we were hoping that we could wrestle Barley Barber out of the hands of FP&L the same way that Ellen and others wrestled Fish Eating Creek out of the hands of Likes Brothers and opened it back up to the public and to protection. And while I won't say that we were as successful because it's not recognized as a water of the state as it should be, because it's still connected through canals to Lake Okeechobee, and that's another battle to fight. But after 10 years of having Barley Barber closed, with Ellen Peterson alongside of us at our protest camp, where we held demonstrations for 5 days straight at the front gate of Barley Barber until we forced our way in and said open it to the public. They finally opened it last year. Barley Barber is open to the public. You can take a tour there and see what it's like for yourself, see how beautiful it is because of the same kind of direct action that happened in Fish Eating Creek. Now our hope is that we can get it declared public and protected so that in perpetuity we can visit that place, not just when FP&L opens the gate for us. So, and last on that note of FP&L, the thing about Ellen that I loved so deeply is that her commitment down to the last breaths was to fight for what was right. And when Florida Audubon Society came out on the side of industry, like they often did, and we've learned the hard way that Florida Audubon was working essentially as lackeys of industry interest, just like they had done in Palm Beach County to support the power plant being built 1,000 feet from a wildlife refuge. Ellen Peterson wrote a letter published in local newspapers to point out what was happening on Fish Eating Creek, and that the industrialization of this area and the waterways in this area is on the brink right now and moving forward by people who want to manage and control these water systems for human consumption, for human greed, and we need to fight that. And Ellen's, I think, last message to us was that we need to stand up to the companies, the government agencies, and the false environmental prophets who claim to, give their orders from above. I faced off with Eric Draper for the first time in Tallahassee, and I realized the reality of whose side some people are on when they're getting a lot of money from big developers. And I think we all owe it to Ellen to also look as clear-eyed at that sort of situation and fight for Fish Eating Creek the same way that people in the past had. And if it comes down to doing what people like Lucky Whidden did with a blowtorch, that I hope that we'll be ready to fight with as much courage and commitment and compassion as Ellen Peterson did.
Frank Jackalone, to be followed by Cindy Bear.
What a great afternoon, really great. And I'm Frank Jackalone, Senior Organizing Manager for the Sierra Club and its Florida staff, Florida Staff Director. I knew Ellen Peterson for just 14 years, and I'm humbled to have walked with her on part of her magnificent journey. Ellen founded the Sierra Club over 30 years ago, turning it into an unparalleled, the Sierra Club Calusa Group, turning it into an unparalleled force for environmental action in Southwest Florida. The group took on every major environmental battle that I knew of It wasn't just focused on Fishing Creek. Ellen was there when there was an environmental issue, and she was a magnificent champion for what was right. She was a giant among Sierra Club volunteers. She fought more battles and won more victories than any of the hundreds of Sierra Club volunteer leaders I have personally worked with. She gained the respect of all, not just her devoted supporters, but her allies who sometimes disagreed with her on strategy and tactics, and also her opponents who feared and admired her. She did all of this as a volunteer, and she wasn't a professional commissioner, she wasn't a professional artist, she wasn't a professional litigator, or a professional organizer like most of the rest of us giving speeches today. But she accomplished more than any of us. My fondest memory of Ellen was right here when she was managing the Fish-Eating Creek campground. This was a very special place for her that demanded coming out of retirement. She came out of retirement to be located right here in the center of the fight. With great joy, she took me and another Sierra Club staff member on a tour of the great campground, and then up the river, over to Like's property. She opened the gate. I said, "We're going up to Like's property." She said, "Doesn't matter, I do this all the time." And she brought us to a spectacular vantage point. It impressed me as the most beautiful place in Florida I had seen. And as you all know, there are many, many beautiful places in Florida. At that moment, Ellen hooked me as a lifelong member of her team protecting Fish-Eating Creek and the surrounding ecosystem. People like Ellen Peterson make a lasting mark on the world, more so than any of our state, national, or world leaders. It's people like Ellen who make the greatest difference when they innovate in an important change in one small corner of the planet, inspiring people in other places to try to do the same thing. When they fearlessly devote their life to protect from destruction this one small corner of the planet they know best and love, inspiring others to do the same. It's when they pass on their mission to scores of other people like you and me to carry on their work to save this one small corner of the planet. As Sierra Club founder John Muir knew, as Ellen Peterson knew, as you and I have learned from them, each small corner of the planet is connected to all the other parts. Ellen's undying struggle to protect the uplands, swamps, and ranch lands traversed by the Florida panther in Southwest Florida, the life-sustaining peace Caloosahatchee, Estero, and Imperial Rivers, the Big Cypress Wilderness, the aquatic treasures of Pine Island Sound, and most of all, Fish-Eating Creek, all helped to save the rest of the planet that they are connected to. Ellen was victorious in her life, in her struggle to protect and preserve all natural life. We celebrate her victory today, and we pick up her paddle today and continue her magnificent journey. Thank you.
Cindy Bear and Daniel Shane.
One more adjustment of the microphone. Good afternoon. Thank you all. I am so truly honored to be here, and what a responsibility I felt closing this part, our speaking tributes to Ellen and to her life and to her lessons. And I thought about this role a lot. And in doing that, I read some of the obituaries, the past news articles, the letters to the editors, the tributes that have been coming in the last several weeks after Ellen's passing. And I found some key descriptors. Some of them we heard today. And they included that, she was an activist, she was a champion, she was informed, she was fearless, she was visionary, she was powerful. She never worried about what others thought. She was an extremist. She never compromised. That's gracious. An extremist who never compromised. And I thought, geez, that sounds so militant, but my gosh, don't we all know her to have been a pacifist who really, despite decades of confronting ugliness in so many forms, was really undeterred in her advocacy on behalf of wild places, that she knew too that that was service to humanity. So I thought again, well, why are these descriptors apt for that person? How do I reconcile this paradox? And I would read these stories of meetings. Many of you were there, thank you. Where Ellen would show videos of Fish Eating Creek, and she would describe the assaults, and she would inform about the specialness of the places, and there would not be a dry eye in the house, and it didn't matter whether the person had arrived in their four-wheeler with their shotguns in the back, or they'd come in their suit and tie to sit on that board, or they'd come because they were you and I. And I realized what Ellen embodied was what some describe as speaking truth to power. She spoke truth to power. And quite reassuringly for me, mind you, she rested and was renewed in speaking truth to power. Because there are some ultimate truths. And one of them is that protecting free-flowing creeks and watersheds is perhaps the ultimate means to preserving continuity of life. It's a continuity of our humanness, our histories, our legacies, of the water cycle through the planet, these things that our artists sing about and show us. They convey nutrients. So she lived that truth to power and rested there and was renewed in it. Others said she never worried about what others thought. Well, yeah, go figure. Why would you when you're speaking truth to power? It's okay. You don't worry about what other people speak or think of you. And well, as to never compromising, well, Ellen's truth, I feel, in part came from her longevity and her capacity to take the long view. Hopefully we don't have to live a long time to understand taking the long view. Florida has environmental histories that inform us of that. And Ellen joins people such as Marjorie Carr. Talk about taking a long view. Please, if you don't know the history of the Cross Florida Barge Canal, and of people who went out and spoke truth to power about the conveyances of free-flowing water bodies, but didn't quit even though there's highways and bridges to nowhere and federal government funds and hundreds of years. I mean, that was conceived and then finally got to a major point. The St. John's, the Ocklawaha, the Withlacoochee, under threat, and there was a long view that, hey, yeah, okay, well, we're here now, though, so let's just keep it going. And sure enough, today, that's a lot of our greenways, our powerful, beautiful spots to go and find that renewal and that place to speak truth to power. She held the key outcome at heart. There was another article that said Ellen's key message to students from FGCU who visited in a civic engagement class was, and you heard it today, show up. It don't make a difference if you don't show up. Yes, she meant at meetings, she meant in offices, she meant also though on our phones, on our computers, in our daily lives, and our choices, and our relationships, and how we make our decisions. Ellen's body, of course, is gone, resting now, renewing in that spirit. It's stronger in some ways if it continues to invigorate us to remember some of those simple truths about speaking and living and being in the truth. And I wouldn't be doing justice to Ellen if I didn't get some specifics. So, there's this town that people are talking about building near here. It doesn't have to be built because there's an ISD or there's appropriate zoning or there's some abstract financial system, because there's simple truth. There's simple truth about what the ramifications of that could be and the need or lack of for that. And I'm sorry, I could tell today there are some people who don't know that Fish Eating Creek does not freely flow to Lake Okeechobee today, right now. It does not, sadly. And unfortunately, Ellen wouldn't be very happy about that if we didn't bring that up today, for those of you who didn't know. And there might be a real tribute to Ellen in being sure those are removed, whether by dynamite or by petition. There's many skills here in the room, in the house, I should say, on the lawn. And so speaking truth, seeing and embracing beauty, taking the long view, being powerful in your happiness, that's how I reconciled that. Is this person an extremist militant, or was she this beloved pacifist who sat and was renewed in power? And I thank Ellen because she filled me with some of these truths. And I brought also with me a piece of prose by Mary Oliver. If you don't know Mary Oliver's work, I encourage you to seek it out. And I never was able to discuss this with Ellen, but as I was again pondering this these days, and I came across this again, I thought, okay, this says so much, says so much. The title, frankly, directly of this prose is When Death Comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what's it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name, a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence. And each body, a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I had made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. So thank you, Ellen, for showing us how to do more than visit this world.
Hugs works. Now I have to tell a deep, dark secret about Ellen. Now, it may amaze you all, but there was a period of time in Florida history where developers didn't go get their permits to clear land. Would you believe? I mean, they had to, but they figured forgiveness was easier than permission. There was an island. There is an island, Connie Mack Island, which Ellen owned a piece of and was going to keep it in a natural state. But during the era where it was publicly stated that a crocodile dug that canal, not that drag line, and that the mangroves had spontaneously ripped themselves out of the ground and stacked themselves, not that bulldozer. Well, Ellen's property got denuded of vegetation because the bulldozer operator didn't really care, forgot where the property line was. In that day, unless you caught the action while it was happening with an enforcement officer, generally you could say that was a crocodile that did that canal. You didn't see that drag line. Well, Ellen called the local enforcement agency, came out, said obviously this was done by that bulldozer because it was sitting there in the mangroves. The defense was, I left it on the uplands. And that's when we discovered Ellen knew how to drive a bulldozer. So Ellen. It's been said that she is gone, and it will take 20 to replace her. Are there 20 here? Yes. Are there 20 here? Yes. Are there 20 here? Yes. Too soon. Now we're going to have a moment of silent meditation with music while each of us remembers Ellen. Thank you, Heidi and Jim. This is the close of the first, or I'll call it the formal part. We now adjourn to dining, and then you will hear some screaming and waving of hands and pointing towards the kayaks to start the trip down fishing. So thank you all for coming. You are all Ellen's friends, and she's here with us. She's with each of us, and we will be one day with her saying we did our job.
You left that there. We protected that the whole time. Chasing people away. You do that all the time. Oh, I'll put this here, and I'm like, oh my God.
I do that all the time.
Yes, Steve had to chase people
Did you
off.
sign the
I had
picture
to
too?
chase people off.
I signed the picture too.
Good.